7:00. And first,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Courtney is joining us remotely. I do have need for an added agenda item. We actually discovered that we had special meeting minutes from June, I think, because we had a meeting that we hadn't approved the minutes. So I would like to ask for getting the minutes added to vote for them under minutes under number 6.
The Board of Education amend the agenda to add the vote on June 13th, 2024 special meeting minutes during agenda item 6.
Second.
All right, so Heather made the motion, Denise seconded it. This is just a vote on moving it onto the agenda, and then we'll vote on it when we get there. So everyone in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Courtney. All right.
Sometimes there's a delay, so just give it.
What is it?
No, it's the setup though, so I just give it maybe like 10 seconds.
Okay, and I heard her say aye.
R.
I was just gonna say, is that just
I
the?
think it's a new feature, so they Google automatically like takes minutes as well.
Oh,
I think we can disable it if the board wants.
that might be kind
Can
of.
we disable it? Maybe I should yeah.
Is that,
It's not bad.
if they take
Is
minutes?
that what I got from Justin once? After our, I got a set.
Sometimes it does, like even when you have like a Google Meets, yes, like it'll do it automatically. It's like, I don't know how to turn it off.
Is that,
I actually liked it.
Yeah.
Tell you the truth.
is that gonna make justice like easier?
Yeah, I don't think she uses them, so like she's going to do it, how she normally does.
Yeah, I would still do it from my notes.
All right, so next on the agenda, we have commendation.
Oh, yes, that came up real quick. So we have the North Central Acts of Kindness Awards, which are presented monthly. And it's to one middle school and one high school student, coordinated by Cheryl Gustafson. She's back there. Thanks, Cheryl. In partnership with the North Central Chamber of Commerce. Just a couple tidbits of information. One, the NCCC, I like to call them, does make a donation in the name to a charity of that student's choice. And with that, I'm going to ask Cheryl to come up and provide a little bit more information and introduce one of our recipients.
Okay, and we actually have the administrators, so I think came with introduction stuff, so for them to come up with me as well. So the East Windsor Public Schools joined the North Central Act of Kindness last year. And as Patrick said, we acknowledge one student per school in the high school and the middle school per month. The North Central Chamber comes out quarterly to present the awards to students. The recognitions to the students, they get a nice certificate with an acknowledgement of who nominated the students and why they were nominated. And it also acknowledges the charity that the student chose to support. Any student can be nominated for the act of kindness. It's not based on athletics or academics. It's based on students being good and kind citizens in the school. We do very mindful of presenting those awards during the school hours, so classmates can see their classmates be acknowledged for the good work they're doing in their school. At this time, I'll turn it over to our administrators from the middle school to acknowledge your student.
So the middle school had 2 nominees, or 2 people at once. So one, Charlotte is here today. So Mrs. H has her nomination, and then the other student's not here, so I can just kind of share about the other student after.
It'd be great if
Yep.
it's still here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Field.
Okay, so this is Charlotte. The team nominated her for so many reasons. So I'm going to read what they said. She shows compassion to her peers and teachers on a daily basis, which I can vouch for. She is always the first to volunteer to help a staff member and will check in periodically to see if there's anything she can do to help her teachers. In addition, she sends thank you notes to her teachers and staff members so that they know that they're appreciated for everything that they do. She enthusiastically works with all of her peers, and if someone is left out, Charlotte's there to kind of include them, make sure they're part of the group, which is really important, especially at the middle school level. We don't want anybody left out. So Charlotte makes sure that she really does. I've seen her do it at lunch. I've seen her do it in the hallway. Like, kids aren't walking alone if Charlotte's around. She recently has shown an interest in joining after school activities, specifically ones that relate to community service and leadership. She shows kindness to people and animals alike by regularly helping at, if I say it wrong, tell me, Shagbark Hickory Farm.
You said it right.
In town. Okay. So she definitely is deserving. She is an amazing, kind person to everybody around her. And she did end up, and I'm going to get it right, she ended up choosing the charity of Breakthrough Type 1 Diabetes because her friend actually has type 1 diabetes. So it was really near and dear to her heart. So, Charlotte.
So the other student who's not here was nominated for the month of September was Jack Clifford. He's an 8th grader at the middle school. So Jack was nominated by the 8th grade teachers. So one shining example of Jack occurred in one of the in his socialist class. A student was struggling. Jack helped him out. And then another time in the hallway, student dropped all his pencils, like his pencil case. Jack was one of the only students that helped picked it all up. And Jack is always smiling. He's always welcoming to all the students. He always helps everybody, has a positive attitude, inspires others to with his kind gestures in the 8th grade class. And Jack donated to the ASPCA because he has a shelter dog and wants to help with dogs in shelters. That was Jack. And he's also is an athletic and wrestle, so I think he's probably wrestling right now.
Please.
Hello, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Barbara Lindsay, assistant principal of the high school. We had 2 sophomores nominated. The first one is Roman Shizzle. He was nominated by Mr. Edwards, our athletic director. And Mr. Edwards commented that Roman always has a smile on his face and is quick to lend a helping hand when needed. I've seen Roman on numerous occasions go out of his way to be friendly to others, etc. And Roman is a good student, but an even better young man. And I can tell you, if you ever see Roman in the hallways, he always says hello to everyone, good morning. And he's genuinely just a kind person. So you can have a day and all of a sudden Roman's like, good morning, how are you? And you're like, all right, I'm great. You know, I can't remember, and forgive me who Roman donated to, but I can get that information certainly to everyone later. Our second sophomore is Shamar Kroom Wilson. And he was nominated by Mr. Masters. Shamar always seems to find time to tie up the workspace he is in. He picks up litter or stray papers in the classroom, and he takes additional refuse to the waste bin in the cafeteria. These little acts of kindness typically go unnoticed by his peers. And I could tell you, having done lunch duties basically every single day, that he is very gentle, and he'll walk by somebody, can I help you with your trash? And he helps and just takes the trash. The custodians love it because I tell you, there is not a tray left in that room. So, and he does it, and no one asked him to do it. He just took it upon himself and just helps out his fellow peers. But he donated to Loaves and Fishes, which is a local food shelter where he lives. So thank you very much.
We're good with those.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. You are free to stay for the meeting, but we do understand it's a school night, so if you want to head out, you're more than welcome to. That's fine. Completely understandable.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, Charlotte.
Have a good night.
It is. So we bring them to the board quarterly. That's why you had 2 from each school.
Very good. All right, so next on the agenda, we have the minutes, and first we're gonna do the November 13th regular meeting minutes that were on the agenda. Begin.
I'll make a motion to approve the November 13th, 2024 regular meeting minutes.
Second that. All right, so we have a motion from Heather and a second from Betsy. Did anybody have any changes or amendments to the meeting minute from November 13th? All right, if there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Sorry, any opposed? No, okay. All right, so those were passed. And next we have the minutes from, June 13th that we discussed earlier. So these were handed out if you want to take a minute to look at that quick. This was just, it was a special meeting and I think we just didn't get them approved in our usual manner because they didn't show up on the next grouping. So it had just been noticed that they had been on the website, but we're still in draft. So we just want to kind of do some housekeeping and get them approved. If anybody has any,
I'll make a motion.
go ahead. Sorry.
I'll make a motion to approve the Thursday, June 13th special meeting minutes as written.
A second.
All right, so Denise made the motion and Heather seconded. Does anyone have any questions or amendments to the minutes? There's nothing further. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you very much, everyone, on that one. All right, next on the agenda is public participation. Do we have any public participation? I don't believe we have any.
I don't think we have any.
Public in the audience. I think we're good. I think we know everybody. All right. And next on the agenda, we have our student representative report. Our student representative was not able to attend this evening because she had something with the FAFSA and also had some quizzes she needed to study for. But it is in the packet. So unless anybody has any questions or anything to add, leave that report in the packet. All right, and next we have our upcoming meetings and events. This is our usual list in the agenda of upcoming. It is quite the list for December and January, huh?
Yeah, just to highlight one change from the original schedule. January 9th is a Thursday to accommodate both the facilities and finance subcommittee meetings. That month, we bumped the finance to Thursday. Noreen and I did connect on that as well.
I was wondering why they were back to back. What made it end up back to back?
I think because typically it's the first Wednesday is facilities, and that's January 1st.
Okay. I was gonna say, we need to readjust stuff, but it's just
That's the holiday, yeah. All right, were there any other comments or questions about the upcoming meetings and events list? All right, next we have our positive school climate and equity report.
Yes, so at this time, I'll ask Cheryl to come up to present. Her report is in the packet. As you may recall, Cheryl does present to the group once a year. Typically she covers quite a bit in her role as far as the safe school climate and equity director. So she's our liaison with the work with Open Choice. She does all her oversees all our social emotional learning within the school district. She's our liaison with our community partnerships. And then what prompted this more recently was the community survey that we put out each year. There's some questions that came up based on some of our parent feedback that was surrounded by the nature of Cheryl's work. So we thought it was very timely too, as far as piggybacking off of the Acts of Kindness Awards with their time as well too. So with that, I'll hand it off to Cheryl. Just get that.
over to the second slide.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm just going to cover with you a few different areas that we've been working on in our school climate and equity work this year. We've been very busy, and we're focusing this year on school climate legislation mandates. There's been some new legislation that passed last year. School climate programming at the middle and high school. We'll be talking a little bit about tonight about social emotional learning, the equity focus within the district, our family and community engagement efforts, and community partnerships. So those will be the focus of the things that we're talking about tonight. Next slide. Each of the things we'll be discussing tonight are in direct alignment with our strategic plan. Goal 2, providing opportunities for all students to find their own path to success and ensuring equitable access for all along that path. in establishing an environment of equity, respect, empathy, and responsibility. And again, direct correlation with strategy 1, creating positive connections with families, and strategy 2, continuing to create a positive learning environment. Next slide. So the first thing that our district school climate and equity committee has been working on, again, our school climate and equity committee district-wide meets once a month. We've been working in conjunction with the State Department of Education. Amanda Pickett has been consulting with us on familiarizing ourselves with the school climate legislative update. In 2023, a bill was passed where schools are really going to have to overhaul our school climate work. And so some of the big ticket items, there are some things that we already have in place and that we're in good shape with, but there are some critical elements that we do need to establish, and we have been working as a district committee to put those elements into place. The first thing is that the Board of Ed will be required to pass a new school climate policy before the start of the next school year. We are holding off on bringing that to you until the end of the school year because there are some critical elements that need to be in place and established when that is passed. So we're building those systems this year so that when we pass the new policy, everything will be in place and ready to go for the start of next school year. Those critical elements that we are working on right now is that there is a new definition of bullying in the state climate policy. It incorporates more language around the imbalance of power surrounding bullying, because there is some confusion, I think, about what bullying is and what bullying isn't, which why it's a term that a lot of people use for mean behavior, where the legislation is actually very specific on what bullying is and what it isn't. So I think that the new definition will make it clearer for families to understand what bullying it is. Is there conflict sometimes? Yes. We need to address that? Yes. But is it always bullying? Not necessarily. So I think the new definitions will help families and staff understand the gray area that sometimes can be confusing for folks. The other piece is that, just one more time. Challenging behavior is another term that's going to be introduced, and challenging behavior seems pretty ambiguous, but it is actually very specific. With regard to the state policy, challenging behavior are behaviors that are highly disruptive to the classroom environment, ones that pose safety questions and such. So it seems like an ambiguous term, but it's actually very specific in the state legislation. So we're working on building our plans to address those two things. And each building will have to develop a school climate improvement plan, which is based on the standards for school climate, physical environment, connections with teachers, safety, things of that nature. Our climate plan will address those areas. The other elements are currently in place, that we have restorative practice in place, we have social emotional learning in place, we have staffing requirements, meaning that the school climate specialist and coordinator, assistant principals, myself, we are in good shape there. Next slide. Another piece that we've been working on this year is that we, as a open choice school, one that has a strong partnership with Open Choice, we were asked to participate in a pilot of school climate programming that was offered by West Ed and the State Department of Education. So we are participating in a 2-year pilot. We are about to begin our 2nd year of that pilot. And the focus of both the middle and the high school that are participating is on culture shift. And specifically, our work is focusing on, at the middle school level, relationships with staff, connections with staff, students and staff connections. And at the high school, the focus is on positive behavior plans for students, positive behavior improvement plans, so that we have a more positive learning environment in the classroom. And as I mentioned, we continue with our social emotional learning focus throughout the district. Restorative practice really is the foundation to all the work that we do district-wide. And we continue to train all staff in those areas. And at the Broadbrook School specifically, with Mr. Ryan, he's been leading up the school climate committee at that building. They really wanted to have a greater amount of time allotted to social emotional learning. So the committee worked to update some of their lesson plans that they're doing with regard to social emotional learning to be responsive to student need. And also twice a month, they have added an extra 20-minute block to their morning meeting to support social emotional learning. At the middle school, the Safe School Climate Committee is really working on developing, revamping their social emotional learning lessons to be more interactive in nature, to give student voice, and also every classroom does ROAR lessons at the beginning of the year, which follows their respect, ownership, awareness, responsibility pillars that are central to their social emotional learning at the middle school. And then finally, at the high school, we continue with our advisory programming, preparing students for life in and outside of high school. And our focus at the high school really has been in conjunction with the school climate programming with West Ed. And that is to really focus on professional development that supports social emotional learning for teachers to be able to implement and embed social emotional learning into the work that they're doing with teachers. And Barbara has been leading a lot of that work, preparing teachers to be able to focus on the social emotional learning, doing a book study with staff, and preparing them for advisory lessons each and every month. Next slide. To speak to our equity focus, so many things going on in the district, but I really think it's important to highlight the tier 1 instructional practice work that all of the buildings are working on in their, with regard to giving students equal universal access to high quality instruction. And, you know, I'm starting on my 3rd year in this district, and I can tell you that how this district sees through all of the tier 1 professional development provided to their staff is really excellent. And it does ensure that students have equal universal excellence in their classrooms. I want to speak a bit to the Educators Rising work. As you saw earlier this year, we created our Increasing Educator Diversity Plan, which has been submitted to the state. A part of that work was to incorporate the Educators Rising Club into our district. We are in our 2nd year at the high school with that club. We are providing those students. We have 5 students who truly are wanting to be teachers right now. That we have other students who are involved in the club who are interested in it, but not sure. We've provided them leadership opportunities. Last week, we attended the CIRC Youth Empowerment Symposium in West Hartford. And after we come back from vacation, our Educators Rising students who are aspiring educators are going to be presenting at the Connecticut Association of Schools Elementary Leadership Conference. They will be actually teaching SEL lessons that they have created to elementary school students. So it's a pretty cool opportunity, and I'm looking forward to taking those kids to that. Next slide. Family engagement focus. Again, we've learned a lot from our partnerships with Open Choice. One of the things that we introduced was orientation programs for our new families, because we did, over the last 2 years, take in lots of new students at the younger level, especially. And so we are very intentional about providing an orientation program to our new students and to our new families to help them be familiar with the school itself, the building, and the people, the faces that they would see within the building. And last year we started with an orientation just for those Open Choice students, but this year we invited all new to district families to participate in those tours. Very well attended at both the high schools, middle school, the elementary school. Very well received by all students, whether they're coming in from Hartford or whether they're coming in from town. Another focus area, again, we have a lot going on. We want to speak to the local prevention council establishment. We've been partnering with an organization called Amplify to establish a town local prevention council. And we're really coming together. We launched it last spring, and we did our first parent education event last month, which was a screening of a documentary film called Screenagers Under the Influence, focused on addiction through the lens of not only substances, but social media, how they're connected. So it was pretty well attended. I think that we need to do some more events like this. It was our very first one. Looking forward to doing more events such as that in the future. Next slide. And some other community partnerships that we've been working on. Really happy to say that in this year we have established a juvenile review board for the town of East Windsor. The school has been an active partner in establishing the juvenile review board. So what that is if a student has a brush with law enforcement, if they have an arrest, this is a restorative justice option that the police officer can exercise to help educate that youth to make better choices. It follows the students for 6 months. We provide them with restorative tasks, educational opportunities to repair the harm that was done through whatever action got them into trouble. So it's a great thing to have in place, otherwise the other option is just court. And we want to give students a chance to learn and do right. Another piece is the YMC Community Roundtable. Last year, Patrick and I were invited to participate in this roundtable in Ellington. It's a collection of schools in the area that come together quarterly. We talk about things such as youth services, food pantries, our collaboration with law enforcement. It's just been a really great opportunity to connect with other school districts and to share ideas. I found it to be a valuable opportunity just to get ideas from other school districts on how we can partner with families in the community. Slide. I do want to highlight an important community partnership that I'm really proud of. All the schools did great work on Veterans Day this year. It's something that touches all the buildings. We had events at the elementary school, the boot camp. The kids got to practice boot camp type drills in school. They got to do thank you letters to veterans. The middle school, a lot of the students participated in the 5K for Veterans Day. I think they had 10 students who participated in that, maybe more. Was it more than that? Yeah. The number of students participated, we even had some high school students participate in the 5K. And a guest speaker, Colonel Philip Wheelhauer, he's an alumni of East Windsor Public Schools. He came to speak and do a Q&A with the middle school students, and he also came as our keynote speaker at the high school. The high school hosted a huge community-wide tribute. 25 veterans were in attendance. Opportunities for students to meet with veterans and to ask them questions about their service. We had some advisory time, and then we had a full assembly featuring the band. It was really nice. So it was a really great opportunity. Next slide. And then finally, I don't really need to speak all that much to the North Central Act of Kindness. It's a student recognition that we introduced just last year. But we have other student recognition programs that have really come into play over the last couple of years. Each and every school, the middle school, the high school, the elementary school, have worked very hard to acknowledge student growth. And there are so many attendance incentives, performance incentives, fortunately graduate incentives that recognize student growth. And it's really a nice thing to see students be acknowledged for their excellence that they're showing. And we introduced the Yukon Stars of Honor. It's another citizenship acknowledgement for students in elementary school through grade 5. For doing good things in their school. And we can acknowledge, I believe, 8 students per grade. That is all I have for you today. Could have spoken a lot longer, but any questions?
Thank you.
All right.
I was just gonna say, just about the acts of kindness when Cheryl was getting her award. I don't know if anybody saw her father.
Oh,
Look at his face.
mhm. Nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, maybe go to the superintendent's report.
Yes. The last time we had a board meeting was about a month ago because of the Thanksgiving break. I think we've had 2 facility subcommittee meetings since then, and there has been some work done in the background. I know a number of members are aware of these updates because they attend the facilities subcommittee, but I know not everyone's in attendance and just felt the need just to update everyone where we are. So the educational specification meetings at each school have been completed by CSG consultants. Last time I reported out, the middle school and high school had been done. Since our last board meeting, they did do the elementary. It was the Monday, I believe the Monday before Thanksgiving. I will say at our most recent subcommittee last Wednesday, CSG was in attendance and they provided some additional updates. So they did report that the initial draft of those specs should be out sometime this month. So I haven't seen it yet, but as soon as I have it, certainly I'll communicate that. Also, Jim Giuliano from CSG reported that there were 5 engineering firms that placed a bid on the RFP that closed last Wednesday. So he is reporting on the day of. So
Engineering or architect?
architect, thank you for clarification. Also, Ira Yellen, the community engagement specialist, was in attendance and he reviewed with feedback from a group. The group draft of a 2-month timeline for January, February It does include sending out the community newsletter, to be mailed out to all households in town. Along with, that newsletter, a baseline, survey, and also providing a Q&A. The newsletter and survey, will be, reviewed at the next, subcommittee prior to being mailed, with the goal to go out to all residents around mid to late January. And then, the question was raised during the last subcommittee meeting on whether the work of the subcommittee on renovating or building new schools was more appropriate for a de facto subcommittee, of the Board of Selectmen. We did engage in discussion and input from CSG, and the general consensus was an agreement to move in that direction, as long as like membership, meeting schedule, and timelines remain the same. So I don't know if there's any questions. Certainly, Denise as chair, obviously facilitated those conversations
He
too.
is looking at me like.
I was just gonna say, if you want to speak to that. No, Patrick and I had talked about
Yeah.
that because I wasn't able to stay for the whole meeting, but if you want to speak to any.
I truly felt at that meeting like I was on a speeding train. And hanging on for, okay, what, I know that with the election stuff, I missed a gap, I had a gap of stuff. But I think what I saw at that meeting, that facilities meeting, was that, if we're adding members to a subcommittee, that's a Board of Ed subcommittee, that it didn't seem to make sense that it was still a subcommittee of the board, but the board needs to decide that. That I threw that out there, but it's a board decision, I think. But I've had no discussion. Like I said, I was at that meeting thinking, how did we get, in fact, at a swearing in of a police officer, Lieutenant Lee. Congratulations to him. I was with Jason and Sarah were sitting behind me, and I said, so how did we get an RFP for architects? What are they architecting? We don't have, ed specs yet. It just seems like there's a lot of pieces going out all over the place that I'm not sure exactly how to keep control of it. In speaking to Jason and Sarah, they seem to feel that it was appropriate to be going to a town subcommittee, town ad hoc committee, I think they called it, rather than a Board of Ed subcommittee. Maybe our work here within this group is close to done. I don't think it is done. We need to make decisions on a lot of things that I think are our responsibility. What kind of buildings do we want? What will address the ed specs? That's, I think, a board responsibility.
What was the reason why they felt that it should be a Board of Selectmen? Because I kind of felt the same way, like, why are we going
To a town,
Or
not Board of Selectmen,
not put
but
to
a
the town rather than it be staying with the Board of Ed?
I can speak a little bit to that because there's some prior conversations. So, with Jim Giuliano and Ira Young. So I think one of the things that's every community is unique, and every communities like subcommittees, their town councils or boards differ, and they differ by charter as well too. So both Jim and Ira indicated in most towns in their experience, it's the building commission, and that then like includes school leadership and other stakeholders like your parent groups. However, based on how our charter set up in past practice, our building commission has never like worked in that capacity. So then the conversation came, and this was a while back, what is the most appropriate existing group to essentially take the lead with that work, and then include the additional members necessary as far as key stakeholders. And that's where it ended up going with the BOE facilities subcommittee. So then that led into a more recent conversation as far as moving it on the town side. I mean, I was offered my thoughts, like, and you know, what I stated at the meeting. As long as it doesn't impact, the timeline, the membership and the work. I mean, whether we meet here or across the street, really doesn't matter.
I was assured that the makeup of the subcommittee, although it will be bigger, would still include all the members of the facilities committee. So we would still have a majority. But I think if we're adding a building committee person, we can't really have a building committee. I mean, you are anyway, but just like we're on CIP, we all have other stuff, but
I
we're
think
board
Jeff-
members.
Jeff ended up, he would have been in the facilities piece as rep.
Yeah.
And he's from the building.
Right,
committee.
right. And we have a PTO person, and I think truly, Jason mentioned again, he had mentioned it at the meeting that we were at, but he mentioned it again. Somebody from, like the 55+ communities would be good spokespeople to start getting, if we're moving this quickly, I think we need to have a more inclusive group. And I don't know that
Yeah,
and I don't know.
Yeah,
that-
so it was two
Yeah.
parts. So the first part was, like membership, the recommended number was 8 or lower. It was recommended, to keep it an even number. There was, as like one of the agenda items for, the subcommittee was identifying, it's part of our homework.
Right.
As far as essentially, organizations, groups, individuals, that absolutely should be engaged with the work based as, them being stakeholders, along with, hopefully supporting, the work as well too. So, I mean, for example, some of the groups that came out, were, like, you just said, Denise,
55+.
yeah, the restricted, I think they refer to it as like the restricted, like age.
Restricted communities, yeah.
East Windsor Youth Athletic Association was like a group that was identified. Realtors, I forgot who brought up, realtors.
I think it was Jim Giuliano. Yeah.
So there was 5 or 6 groups that were identified. And then, essentially the group's homework was, to essentially have a like comprehensive list for the next meeting. And, to engage those groups as we move forward, like as far as focus groups as well too.
So I think if it is becoming a larger or slightly larger, at least with liaisons and that type of thing, it does make more sense to have it be a town board, if that's what we need to do versus just a board of ed subcommittee. Go ahead, Marty.
I was at the meeting, sitting over here. And honestly, I left here thinking, what on earth is going on? Because it seemed to me that we have not completed our work. We are the Board of Education who are ultimately responsible for whatever this becomes. And we've taken a lot of time. We went on a lot of tours. We discovered a lot of things. I have a lot of thoughts in my head of what I saw and what I didn't see. I was under the impression that the ed specs were going to be done. And then those ed specs were going to come back to us with our staff coming and saying, okay, this is what we need for buildings for our schools based on our strategic plan, based on our vision of where we want to go to. I was getting the distinct feeling while sitting there and hearing about all these other people coming in that there's some rush to build us a building and you all fit into it, which is the complete opposite, in my opinion, of what we need to do. We need to say, this is what we need, and this is what you're going to build around it. I was sitting over there, so I was getting some sidebar conversations, and I was really dismayed by the fact that in October, they went out and did paperwork to go hire architects
Without us.
without us knowing anything about it.
As far as I know.
Those bids were due back on the 4th of December. And I am getting a really bad feeling that in the rush to want to get this accomplished in a short amount of time and bringing in so many other people that we are our part in this is being negated when we are the largest voice in this. And
I didn't realize it was gonna be the town. Like, I thought it was gonna be still up our group. It's just, it was not gonna be our sub facilities. It was gonna be a de facto of that, but it was gonna be.
I
still the
understood,
Board of Ed, but-
based on the discussion during the meeting, I understood it the same way Heather did.
And so it's kind of morphed into something else.
So I don't
my
even have a
concern
direction.
is that we have not done our work yet to determine, you know, when we went out and saw things, I saw lots of things that I think, oh, well, yeah, that's terrific and wonderful. But I would really like to have a conversation with Daryl and the science department explaining to me why we need to have a greenhouse. Because our focus is or be it the physical education people who think that they need to be located somewhere else, or however. And I'm really getting a sense, based on that meeting and based on other conversations that are happening out there in the world, that we are not the here and then they're all going to help us. And I go back to the conversation we had with the superintendent of schools in South Windsor, who said, was adamant about the fact that to a degree, the first time they didn't pass was because there were too many people involved. And then she brought it back in and said, no, this is an education project. And we're going to do what we need to do for that. So I have some real concerns that we have to do our work in the best interest of what our staff and our students need in a building long term. Because we're going to spend $40 million. It can't be $40 million to find out that. So I was very concerned.
To your point, those bids, in my opinion, those bids should come to the facilities subcommittee. We should review those as a group and we should make our opinion known before it goes to the building commission.
But the other thing I was really concerned about, Patrick, and you might know where this came from. We never as a board had a decision about this building being included as a renovate to new. Now this building needs something, but we were kind of, I think the last time we all talked,
So I'll
we
tell
were
you, it's
focusing
always
on the
my
other.
understanding through our discussions that this building was always a renovate to new project, and the subcommittees, I know I've had to
But
report.
not within the initial scope. And these RFQs have them bidding.
I don't know if I'm following with like initial scope. I don't know if I'm.
And I may be incorrect, but I was a little surprised that they went out with an RFQ for architectural services for all of them.
All three, or all, whatever it ends up being.
I don't know. I'm just expressing to you guys that I'm getting an uncomfortable feeling.
Denise, were
where
you
this is going.
asked before, the chair, were you asked before that went out?
Absolutely not. And in fact, I would have cautioned that we don't even know if architects are going to be doing some kind of renderings of whatever. We haven't even weighed in as to what we want for common space, how we want the entrances to, have differences of, and the buses coming and going. And that might be some of the nitty gritty, but it's also something that the architects would be addressing. So I don't know. What was that, Patrick?
We were just saying Courtney's had her hand up, so when you're done, Courtney.
How did you see that?
It shows up on my computer. I cannot see that over there.
I just
Why don't we
texted.
let Courtney talk
Can you
then?
all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I did have my hand up for a little bit, which is fine, but I think I would just like to kind of reiterate or stand by what Noreen was saying after I left the meeting too, and I was there. I was I was getting the feeling that it seemed like we were going to have our facilities subcommittee. And then maybe I just want to know if I'm understanding it correct, but it seemed like they were going to be forming a different committee, which wouldn't have all of the subcommittee people, but would only have like one voting member.
All of the subcommittee, I know it's something that I definitely addressed with Jason after at the,
After. Okay.
yeah, and he said, oh no, it would be everybody that's on the facilities committee now.
Okay,
Plus-
thank you for clarifying, because that was something like after I would left was thinking, well, that doesn't really seem like
Yeah.
the right
Yeah.
way to go. Thank
Yeah,
you.
My concern as well.
Yeah,
I think he said something about voting members though. So, I mean, I recall that being a part of the conversation, but what clarifications all that I need?
So I just have one question. I'm really getting the same feeling, and even not being on all of the facilities. Again, I know you've been reporting what you could to us. This is news and I think, I share some of the same thoughts. My question is with this new, how things just kind of morph into something else.
Right.
And so it appears that now we're doing, we have another committee. We'll put this all together. My question is, who will be the chair of that? Who is the person? Would that be?
And my understanding Denise would still be the chair, but I guess that is something we have to determine because I wasn't at the whole meeting.
I mean, I will tell you, it was explicitly stated at the meeting,
It would.
that,
That I would be the chair.
that's the way I understood. I thought Jason stated that.
Okay, so that's one thing, but I think those things have to be really clearly.
Yeah, I think we do need to clearly define, because I was under the impression that
Yes.
Heather was that some people might be liaisons, but not voting members of that committee. But I think we need more clarification about that, because you're right, it's getting to a larger number if we're adding, different.
And I just have one other, and then I'll stop for a second. I would love to see a timeline. When we went to South Windsor and they had this really comprehensive kind of piece that I believe that CSG did for them.
I think that's one of the things that IRA and CSG are working on is a
Yeah,
timeline.
so they
And-
provided a timeline at the meeting that was, like a 2-month timeline.
But it wasn't
basically-
just 2 months.
So,
no.
but it was like, yeah.
But I would like to see it as a board member too, in terms of
Right.
what's happening, whether it's the communication or, going out to bid for an architect. And we have not, I totally agree that, we are not building a business. We are building a schools, for young people. And so I believe as well that this is our responsibility to kind of, again, listen to what, the survey has, the specs will be coming out, but for us to kind of digest that as well, whether we're on a subcommittee or whether we're as a board. I mean, I would love to be able to see that and just have.
Right, and I think that was one of the things that we discussed earlier, was even though this was a subcommittee,
Yeah.
it might be something that all the board members should attend every time. Like, we have talked about that before, Betsy,
I agree.
because
Yeah.
then even if you're not a member of that, or at least you'll know what's going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Courtney, did you have anything else? I just wanted to make sure we didn't cut you off.
No, I wasn't cut off, just kind of just same concerns that we're, not kind of losing our input, because I think the Board of Ed's input should be at the forefront, or at least the schools and our educators and our teachers.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree. And I do think, if that's a concern that even Denise felt that that a lot happened at the last one. Like I said, I wasn't able to stay for the whole meeting, so I definitely appreciate that concern. I think we need to kind of take a
Yeah,
step back.
I mean, just to add, 2 bits of clarification. So one, I agree with many of the points made. 2, as far as the architect and bad specs, I will say, like I have been privy to a number of conversations with CSG, and was explained that they can, go out to bid while still waiting for the ed specs, because by the time it's awarded, you have the ed specs in place to then proceed with the work versus
We still
having.
have to have that discussion here.
Correct, but like,
And so, was it just to keep the timer rolling? So like, hey, they're gonna come out, we can have the discussion, but then there's somebody in place to do the work.
Yeah.
We kind of know what we want versus waiting
Another 2 months.
months to make sure that's the
Yeah, that was my thought exactly, was that it was, let's get both of them done and one can park while the other one is still
Right,
going along.
because it's a process, I'm sure, for anything that's bidding. on
That
something
takes
like
time.
this. It's
Yeah.
not just an easy.
I think Joe had said that, though, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think Joe had said that the bids are gonna be coming to the building committee at our next meeting, not the facilities, but the building commission at the next meeting, because we have to award it so they can get going.
And I guess I didn't realize that those bids would come to the building commission already. Like I thought the building commission got involved later in the process, but I didn't realize.
I didn't know for the architectural piece that it's usually when they're awarding the bid for the construction.
For the actual
project, that the
construction.
Building committee is then involved. I can tell you that, to form the committee, this outside committee, there's usually a purpose for the committee, the makeup of the committee, and, what their goal is. I think Jason said it was 3 years. It can last 3 years. I thought it was like, 9 months, but I think it was much longer than that. So, I have asked him to see that before it goes to the Board of Selectmen. And if we have to have a special meeting of the facilities committee, I would be willing to do that if you all are willing to just address any of the concerns that we've expressed today. Patrick, you have more information because you've been included in all the meetings in the past. So there are things that might have been surprises to some of us that weren't surprises to you. We don't want to hold up the project. That's the thing. Like Carrie was saying, maybe they're doing this in a dual path and we don't want to hold it up, but we also don't want to get run over.
Yeah.
Do you know, like, when those ed specs come out and like you share them with us and the subcommittees see them and
Yeah, there'll be like a full report.
Yeah, and then, so will they'll take, like, is there feedback? Is there?
Yes, so there's
discussion?
initial draft, there'll be review, by school leadership.
Mhm.
I'm sure they'll have some follow-up questions, following the draft.
Mhm.
And then once, they're close to being finalized, they'll be shared with the board.
But for clarification, the part of how those were, kind of the information was gathered was from interviews with our
Yes.
our administrators already.
Administrators, teachers,
Yeah,
custodians.
so they've had some input into them, but then obviously they
No,
would.
they met with every.
But it's not like it's
They
been
met
done.
with the head custodian. They met with the admin assistant from each school. They met with,
I just want to make sure that was
Yeah.
clear for clarity for everybody.
the
that
science
it's not-
teachers is what they need for science labs, the art teacher, tech, special ed. Like every single department, and classroom teacher.
Go ahead, Maureen.
And I appreciate that. That's how it should happen.
Right, right.
My concern is that we're going from Jim Giuliani at CSG having a conversation with a science teacher to giving it to an architect to draw a plan when we haven't been included in it. And with all due respect to everybody, when and if this either fails or works, it falls to this board. It's this board. And I don't want to hold anything up, but I also don't want, and I was sitting over there hearing conversations that were going on around me, and I was getting very concerned when I had one person saying, if they go to this new committee, the architect can't start drawing, and the other guy saying, no, he can start drawing, and I'm sitting there going, what in God's green earth is he drawing? I don't.
Yeah, no,
I would like to know if we think the middle school building is gonna be over where the Board of Education building is, or if it's, and again, everybody's got their job to do. I'm just getting this real concern that it's getting away from us, and we need to be the driving force when it comes to making sure that when it does get out there to all these other entities who have to look at things, that we are first and foremost the driving force to say, no, we need that because it's educationally based, because it's in our strategic plan, it's because it's what our superintendent and our people have determined. So you may think that that's not necessary. And if we don't have that knowledge and a complete understanding of it, we're not going to be able to do that. So I just got very concerned with where it was going.
I think that's also one of the reasons why I'm a little alarmed that the building committee would be taking it over now. Because they don't have Board of Ed representation except for Heather, who is one person.
Right.
Yeah, it was my understanding they can't take it over, or you.
Well,
I'll let you know, they'll probably get my agenda and then.
the bids, they're the ones doing the bids, right?
Mhm. I could have sworn that's what you're.
When's your next meeting, Heather?
My meeting should be Monday,
Uh,
next Monday.
what time?
Oh,
yeah.
it could be the following Monday. Usually it's at 6:30. As soon as I get an agenda, I can definitely.
So that's
Send it to you
definitely
guys.
something to, keep an eye on. And again, I apologize because I had to leave the other meeting, but did Jason say like what the timeline is in terms of this committee being created
I
or?
think he said the next agenda, his next agenda.
For Board of Selectmen?
Board of Selectmen.
Can we wait on that and just continue ours until?
Well,
until
we'll
we get
still be a
something?
committee.
No, I know that, but can we continue to
Subcommittee.
drive it until we're ready to get to that point?
I think.
Yeah, that was my
I think
understanding.
that would be my pitch to
Why don't we?
them is to just say, listen, after
Yeah.
this conversation, I didn't know where everybody else, how everybody else left the meeting. And I guess one thing, Patrick, I've been in a lot of construction stuff, but not a school project from this level. So the ed specs are what the teachers all want, correct?
Yes, they're going,
Yeah.
well, no, they're going, it's based on what you need. So they're going to filter out I mean,
Okay, so
let's
that's-
theoretically say everyone wanted a bathroom and a sink in every classroom. They're not going to draw up specs with,
Right, but will the ed specs show what they, it's like asking your 10-year-old what he wants for Christmas. Well, it's all great, but would they put all of that into the ed specs and then it gets sorted out somehow? How does it get sorted out? How do they eliminate the bathroom in every classroom?
yeah, so I mean, obviously they talk to administrators, talking with the teachers, and the person leading the work is a former superintendent who has the dual background as far as like being a building administrator, being a superintendent, and also having a construction background. So it wasn't like it was Jim Giuliano having the conversation. Certainly there was, it was Samantha and her name is, Fran Fiari, were the two consultants that were part of the conversations.
So they then look at what the teachers and the administrators asked for and say, well, this probably doesn't fit in, or we'll do it this way instead. So then that does mean it has to go back to somebody.
Yeah, so my understanding is there would be multiple drafts. So I mean, the first thing is getting the first initial draft and then providing feedback.
So if we get three drafts in and we've got these architects parked over here waiting for whatever, is that an issue? Did the RFP say that we needed to award the bids like within 90 days or something like that?
Generally, that's what it says in like a good thing, but I don't know. if this one-
Yeah, I didn't,
Forward, isn't it?
yeah, I didn't see it. So haven't been given, the impression that it's going to take 90 days to like get that.
Well,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, the other question that I know Fran had raised at one point was if the architects could do multiple different things and say, well, you could do this or well, you could do that. And I know we kind of ruled that out a little bit, but I don't know if the architects are just gonna.
So CSG and Jim Giuliano did report they can start some of their work prior to having, the specs, completed.
But what is that work?
Yeah, we didn't elaborate or get to that level of detail. I don't think we were prepared to have that conversation yet.
But they can't start the work unless they have some kind of a contract and some kind of a.
They would need, yes, yeah, they would need a time.
So definitely they're starting they would begin some of the stuff prior to. Again, it's this kind of, the simultaneous, is it simultaneous? Do we have a linear progression to this?
Yeah,
And maybe, I mean, that's what they do. So maybe we just don't understand how,
the process.
yeah.
So maybe just what would be helpful is to have CSG, whether it come to a subcommittee meeting or a board meeting, and have Jim just report on process in
Yeah.
general, not even our process, but just as far as like a Q&A. And I think what might be helpful is to help streamline it is having our questions ahead of time. And certainly what I can do is develop a shared document, get all the questions,
Yeah.
and maybe some of it we can even get answered before he comes in, and then whatever's remaining, we can drive the conversation.
Heather, did you have something you were gonna say?
Yeah, on the proposal, it says district conceptual planning and estimating is January 2nd, 2025 to April 30th, 2025. Services for both Broadbrook Elementary School and combined East Windsor Middle School, East Windsor High School are anticipated to run concurrently. So, it sounds like they want to start the process at the beginning of next year. To,
And be done by April.
yeah,
And again, you don't want to be a cog in the wheel.
Well, and does that include all of the communication that's in there as well? I mean, where does?
No,
that-
those are two separate
That's two different
pieces.
things. That's the architect versus, so we talked a little bit about the
Yeah.
communication
Okay,
schedule with
yeah,
Ira.
yeah, right.
So we can, I mean,
Yeah, so there's a lot of good questions. I think what I'll do is I'll create a document. People can just list their questions. We get as much answered ahead of time, and then I can work with Kate and Denise as far as when's a more appropriate meeting, whether it's a full board meeting or a subcommittee meeting. Subcommittee's first on the agenda, so maybe that'd be the better one.
if he could come January 8th. or-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when's our first board meeting? Our first board meeting in January.
Yes.
Is it the 8th too?
I can tell you in a second.
I think at this point, it's more appropriate for it to be the whole board.
Well, I guess what we're saying is it, well, yeah, I guess we can all talk then, but I was gonna say the whole board can come to the facility subcommittee.
I think that's the only issue with that, like when it's in front of the whole board, if there are other questions that
Yeah.
arise, it's much easier.
Right, it's easier to talk, yeah.
I do think it's good to have questions ahead of time so that it's more streamlined and it's not gonna be 5 hours of him being there, but.
Yeah, I was just trying to see.
Yeah.
The board's regular board meetings?
Yeah.
January 8th, which happens to be the same day.
Yeah.
Subcommittee meeting.
Perfect.
All right, so both the regular board meeting and the facility subcommittee are January 8th, so we could see if he can come and we can put him on the regular board agenda, if that makes more sense in terms of that, but if he can't come to that first meeting, we could get questions and kind of get that together.
Yeah, I'll
Have
work
him
hard
at it.
to get either him or Samantha at that meeting.
Okay. All right, so board members should think about if they have questions and email.
I'll put something out with Google, and then you can list your questions.
Questions.
Yep.
Okay.
And then we'll have to have a due date so that obviously they have time ahead
To
of time.
respond.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
So I just have a question. So, we talked about those specs that CSG would have. Will they have them by January 8th?
Yes.
Okay, now,
Yeah.
that's another thing that would be interesting for them.
Now, I don't know if the final draft will be ready by then, but
At least something to kind
I
of,
mean, that's what they reported. They said, they indicated,
This week, I think. right?
yeah,
that's what he reported.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which was a surprise.
All right, I appreciate the discussion and I think that's kind of given us some good things to move forward with. Did you have anything else in your superintendent's report besides the facilities?
Dare you?
No, I'm good. All right, we do have a personnel report in the packet. That has a list. Did anybody have any questions about that? Right, and then Brian, are you next up with a finance report?
Sure. As far as the financials in this packet, we did add the projections that the finance subcommittee went over back in November. I don't believe we ended up having the Board of Ed meeting back then, so that's why they're, a month later. We did have the discussion, the finance subcommittee back in November and like an hour or two ago on. If anyone has any comments or thoughts on that or anything there.
And that's on page 13 in your packet is the fiscal year projection summary. Noreen, did you have anything that you wanted to highlight or?
It's November. we're only, what's that, 5 months into the school year, and a lot of that is the summertime, so projections can be a little flexible.
Fluid.
Yeah.
You know, but the way Ryan is doing it is stuff that we've discussed, and so as time goes on, you know, he'll be able to pinpoint things down better as we progress along, but right now things are looking okay.
Question, Patrick? I know this is about the teacher residency program. I know they owe us money, right? And how do we,
So it was
Yeah.
grant funded, it was grant funded and then they, that was passing legislation. 2 sessions ago, and then it was removed. So because it was in legislation when we had budgeted for it, and then the funding was removed, so local absorbed it.
and there doesn't, well, I guess I could ask, right? It doesn't appear to be, in a future budget from the Department of Education.
I sit on the steering committee. I can tell you, we actually had a steering committee meeting, today, and, it was not reported, so I don't think there's any
Okay.
update in that, although it was mentioned, displeasure that their funding was again, removed. So obviously, whenever you're talking about such a program, you know, funding does come up,
Yeah.
regularly. That being said, I will say, like, I mean, it's our 3rd year participating. I mean, we have, it's produced a high quality teacher with us already that's completed the program. And when you hire that person and they replace someone that typically is usually because of retirement, they're on step 1, the investment has already paid for itself.
Yeah.
So as far as our budget, the program has, and we anticipate regardless, this investment will pay for itself
Okay.
again, with us, you know, because of similar circumstances.
Yeah, it's a great program. It's unfortunate.
The other thing that brings up that I was gonna say, and I think we kind of talked about timing, but we were waiting last time till after the election, was maybe having some, state reps or political types come in to talk about our concerns or things that are impacting our budget. So whether we want to try to schedule something with Jamie or Saud, to see if they could come in and kind of talk about that. I don't know if we have an interest in terms of like Jamie Foster or Saud and more to talk about things that are impacting our budget and whether we have any kind of impact on the state level to ask them to lobby for us type of thing. I don't know if that's something that members are still interested in.
I think it's Patrick and I met with a Zoom meeting with her, and Jason about school funding and her approach to that. But the session doesn't start for another month. I don't know if we want to wait until she's in session or before then.
I mean, what I can do is I can ask and, put it up to her what she has for availability.
Okay, I mean, I just didn't know if that was something the board was still interested in. We've talked about it in the past, or if you're comfortable, like Denise just said, she and Patrick did talk to her about some of our concerns. Or if it's something that the school funding,
The facilities funding.
facility, oh yeah, for the new, so.
Her approach for that. So,
I mean, on the positive, she sounded very confident, that she could support, our work with facilities,
the size of the building
you know, and
and,
funding.
additional percentage maybe. But what other things would we be interested? Do we want to wait until we know what is being proposed by the education committee? That'd be better.
I'm not sure if South is still on the education committee. He was at one point.
Yeah, that chair changed, so
I don't know if it's, I think it's always a great idea to talk to them. I don't think
For
it's
sure.
ever a bad idea to have them here and we express to them, you know, it's a real issue when we have to come up with transportation money for homeless. You know, not necessarily to have a direct absolute, we're talking about this legislative piece, but to give them our input so that while they're there doing their job, they have in the back.
They have that.
Oh yeah, East Windsor brought up the thing about, whatever.
Yeah.
So I would just say, once the session begins, their time becomes.
I was gonna say, then it's tight.
So I mean, the likelihood of them being able to have the availability to come to a board meeting and going guess is,
That's what I'm gonna say. When they're in session, it might be hard.
yeah, so I mean, I think to put, if you want them, maybe the request now would make more sense.
Well,
I agree.
do we necessarily, I mean, I think it's great to have them here, but I'm wondering if it's worth it for us to maybe digest some kind of a letter and send it to all three of them, and then that way, as they're going into session, they can, they have an outline of all the different concerns that we're having right now, and then
That's a pretty efficient way.
it saves them, it saves us time wise, and then we can reconvene if a bill comes up, we can touch base with them, have them come in.
I like the idea of a letter, but I also like the idea of meeting them face to face.
No, I mean, I like
Yeah,
that too, but I just am thinking
Yeah.
of everybody's time too, but yeah.
Maybe table it and know that they're gonna be busy in this session so that we can plan when they're not still in the session. Look, it's not right now.
Right.
And it's still important.
Like after the session.
Yeah, and I think it's good for relationship building for us to have some time with them, but realistically, if they're super busy, we can figure out when the session's
Their job.
done, or when they have breaks, or when they might have some.
It's their job.
It is part of their job. Yeah.
Yeah,
You could always reach out and just say, hey, is there a time that's like.
that works for them. All right, I can work with Patrick to see.
Earlier in the session is less intense for them than you wait till like May, forget it.
Yeah.
They're there till forever, but early, once, I would think, once we have an idea what they're gonna be talking about, we would have maybe more to discuss with them, and then, but early, like February or something.
Okay.
Things that might impact the, our budget and stuff.
All right, we can reach out and see what their timing and see, like you said, what their availability in terms of. I was just, it made me think about it again, my budget.
It is a long session, which is even more intense.
Yeah.
Long session.
Means they're doing
We
the
get
whole
more done, but.
two-year budget.
Yeah, I mean, related, with the support of, Justin too, though, I participated on a subcommittee off of, Alliance districts, and we wrote, and advocated for legislative changes related to excess costs and special ed.
Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, that they should know about. Yeah.
So I will say the majority of the writing that went out was done by East.
Good, really. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, was there anything else under finance? Okay. Next, under new business for a vote, we have our Board of Education goals that we had discussed. This is on page 28, I believe. And Justin is here. Yes. We have questions. These were, this is what came from our work about discussing the goals. He's outlined here the 3 goals and the measurable action steps that go with them. I know we kind of had a couple meetings to discuss this, so I don't know. I think we should be pretty much, ready to move forward on it. But if anybody did have, like an editing comment or something that they wanted to comment on this. But otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve the Board of Ed goals.
To approve the Board of Education rules.
Okay, motion made by Heather and seconded by Carrie. Was there any further discussion or any comments?
I just have a question, Kate. The measurable action steps, which we came up with purposefully. How are we going to do that? Are we gonna do something with Justin like every 6 months or every 3 months? Do we have a plan? For that?
Do we want to maybe on a quarterly basis, put it on an agenda item?
If I may, there's a couple ways you could do this. I'm certainly more than happy to help in whatever role you want me to. I've seen some boards post their goals at the bottom of every agenda as sort of a reminder, similar to they do that with strategic plans in some places too, to keep them constantly reminding of what is it, not part of the agenda, but almost like the fine print at the bottom, to allow you all to focus on that. And certainly in your subcommittees, you could, adopt pieces of those goals as well to move forward. But however you want to do it.
I think, I'm not sure, Noreen, it was more like, how are we going to actually make those action plans? Like, when are we gonna set time aside? Is that what you're thinking of? Like, are we gonna set separate meetings? Are we gonna make a committee to work on one goal, break it up? Like,
An agenda.
I think we need to make a plan for that and maybe put in like, agenda to make a plan for that, because it is gonna take a little bit, because there's work that has to be done to do those.
Yeah, I definitely think checking in and having it on the agenda. On the first one, in terms of a handbook, I was kind of gonna work on that a little bit and gather some of those items and then work with Jessica, I think, on getting that. I know we had a couple different examples that Denise and I talked about. So that one, I think I was gonna kind of take on as a project and see how that went and then bring it back, but obviously,
I just want to make sure we do something, you know.
right, then we would have to bring that handbook back to the board to review. You know, it would be like, these are the things included, what do you think? Like, I would probably come up with a table of contents and then work with, you know, say, hey, does this make sense? Do you think it needs other items? So I think it does make sense to kind of add something on the agenda in terms of how are we doing on our goals? So maybe we could check in. I mean, not every meeting, but like,
I don't have a problem with the goals the way they're written, and maybe we can handle this
yeah,
next meeting or something, but something so that it doesn't just become, yeah, we did that, we
Yeah.
looked over, and next year we look at it and go,
oh, we didn't do that. Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's a good point.
maybe on our next meeting.
Yeah.
Talk about-
The two meetings in January.
Because there's two really steps.
Mhm.
There's two, if I look up goal one, there are two steps there too. Two major steps. One is the handbook and then the other is the onboarding process.
Right.
So there, there are two distinctive things that are going to
Mhm. All right. So I think that's good feedback and we can get it on one of the January agendas to kind of take next steps. But in terms of approving the goals, there is a motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Thank you, Courtney. All right. All in favor? Thank you, everybody. And we can look at whether the first or second meeting in January is a lighter agenda, maybe like the second meeting, so they actually have a chance to get something done and say, okay, this is where we're at, and what's next. Okay. All right, liaison and subcommittee reports. We've kind of talked about some of them already, obviously. We do this earlier in the agenda, but are there, and I don't know that there've been, but are there any liaison? Do you have anything, Heather? in terms of,
CIP,
like,
no. I mean, our CIP got presented to the board of selectmen, they approved it. Building hasn't had anything addressing this.
about policy.
Policy, we're getting ready to, at our next meeting, go through Series 9,000, which is our bylaws and stuff. So that one will be a pretty important meeting. That one, we're gonna actually, instead of sending all our questions to Justin, we're gonna actually have the conversation in meeting. So you guys are all welcome to come. And sit in the audience. So, that's kind of it from me.
And I think that was actually part of that, that works well with the handbook, because I think the bylaws for the board were part of that handbook too. So if those are updated, then we can get those.
Yep.
As part of that as well. Were there any other liaison or subcommittee? Go ahead, Nori.
PTO is in the throes of holiday sort. Tomorrow is the last day, and they could really use some help in the morning, tomorrow morning. They have a lot of help in the afternoon. The kids come over from the high school. The lacking of volunteers in the morning. So if anybody could swing a couple of hours tomorrow morning from like 9 o'clock to whenever, they would truly appreciate it. It's a wonderful experience. It's an absolutely, I left there on Monday at 2 o'clock as completely in the Christmas mood. Of the wonder of little children who can be so thoughtful, so kind and caring. So if anybody can spare a couple hours tomorrow morning, swing on by the Broadbrook School, they'll be happy to have you. Anybody in the room?
Just have to make sure your background checks are up to date.
Oh, yeah.
Because they expired. so-
Yeah, that's my issue. I don't think mine is right now.
So that is another issue, just for people to be aware of if you want to do any longer. That those do expire and that. to get redone.
Another question.
All right.
That's all I have.
Any other liaison or subcommittee? Okay, thank you. And then we have second public participation, but again, I think we don't have any members. Any miscellaneous?
The first home scrimmage for the Tri-Town Hockey Team is on Saturday, for 4:30 at Enfield, rink there.
Will they play?
They are playing East Catholic. It's a scrimmage. They had their first scrimmage last Saturday at E.O. Smith. They did do 6-2, but the scrimmages work because they play everybody, so all the kids get playtime during the scrimmages. They have to, and then during the games, that's not necessarily the case. But their first home little scrimmage, so come and support them.
And I was just gonna point out, there are a couple items earlier on the dates that are, you know, either concerts or the East Windsor Torchlight Parade is December 21st. There's a high school concert coming up on the 16th, so just in terms of other things to keep aware of.
Torchlight Parade, I know the middle school and the high school band are marching in it, and then the
chorus usually
is on the wagon.
Oh, okay.
And the middle school and the high school are going together, so they can do like their little like bench parade or something like that, but they're gonna.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I know the chorus used to always sing at the firehouse.
Yeah,
too.
fourth grade band had a concert yesterday and sounded very well. It was the feedback provided.
That's all.
Right. I have a miscellaneous question. I know that we talked last meeting about possibly doing our meetings through Zoom, but is there any plan for that?
We had said we would start that in January.
So
We would both, it would be through Google.
It's Google.
Yeah, so it'd be a Google link and they'd have to join. You just have to post it. We're just working with IT to have that in place so that we can start that with our January meetings.
I just didn't realize that.
So then we just have to remember to check if there's public as well as
Yeah.
people attending.
Yeah.
All right, and then in our correspondence, we have the subcommittee meeting schedule for 2025. It follows the same schedule, but that just kind of helps people keep track. And then we have the enrollment report and the ESSER.
Yeah, just to highlight the ESSER report. So in there, that's produced by CAPS, the Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents, and it's going to be shared with educational partners, the State Board of Ed, the General Assembly, and federal delegation. And I can tell you within the report, East Windsor is one of 10 districts in the entire state that was recognized for strategic spending related to ESSER funds. So you can find more information in the email as well as the entire report.
And I just wanted to recognize Patrick for kind of doing that work and working with them to get that.
Strategic spending, what does that mean?
Related to ESSER funds as far as making sure that, correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Come along.
And talking about the fiscal cliff in terms of like knowing that certain money was going to go away and preparing to be
Well, I was just gonna
like
say,
ready for that.
like you did, we've come a long way.
And obviously Ryan and Daryl had,
Any strategy for a while there. So, awesome, thank you.
and obviously Ryan and Daryl had a lot to do with that as well.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you look on page 10 of the actual report itself, I believe it's page 45 in the packet, you'll see the East Windsor plan is on there and that talks a little bit more about that.
Nice job.
Yeah.
I got nice to have your name on the front of this.
Thank you.
How was that determined, like which towns? It's a good spotlighted.
I mean, that was determined by CAPS. I mean, certainly, like in the report, you were given essentially like within the funding, like I'll call it ESSER coach. I don't know, there might be a term, but we had an ESSER coach. His name was Guy Stella. He's one of the ones recognized. So I'm sure they're the one who reported back and said, hey, like these are the districts that were doing it right. These were the districts that were doing it the best. And then it was essentially why I would imagine the ESSER coach brought that back.
It's an interesting read if you look at all the different districts.
Yeah.
So it does have a, it really gives you a big perspective of what people, what districts are, we did with their money.
All right, and we do have need for an executive session.
So I would, I don't
Make a
know.
motion to go into executive session. Second.
That was good. Yeah, motion from Carrie and a second from Heather. All in favor?
Hi.
All right, so it's 8:25. Yeah, we just need a minute.
This is just.
I signed it and then but you need that while you print it out for. Okay.
Do I need to come back on a different link or can I just stay here?
I think.